Where'd the Apple II go? Where'd the eMac go? Where'd the MacBook Pro go? Oh, there's the Apple II. Wait, what? Yeah, I've got myself a nice 20-inch Apple Cinema display. Beautiful. This display is actually from 2007. It's one of the older models. And powering this display, and by the way, that is a video, Louis Rossmann. That guy is awesome. Check out his channel, Louis Rossmann. If you have any interest in motherboard repair, definitely a great channel to watch. But anyway, that's not what we're talking about. Powering it is a quad-core Xeon powered Mac Pro from 2007. So at work, we had a lab full of iMacs and four Mac Pros, and they were all first-generation Mac Pros. When we built this particular building in 2007, we decided to outfit certain areas with the equipment that they need. Fortunately, we were able to secure 4 Mac Pros for a video lab, and these machines were designed and built to be the main workhorses in this particular room. However, it turned out they were much more efficient and faster than the I think there were like 12 iMacs that were with it. But we realized as the machines started to age and the versions of Mac OS were climbing and climbing, that the old first generation Mac Pros could only natively support up to 10.6.8. And I did find there is a workaround for that. And the workaround is to replace the 32-bit boot firmware with 64-bit firmware, or something to that effect. And I believe you have to generate the image on a newer machine, like an iMac. But we decided not to do that. Instead, we bought 4 new iMacs for this particular room, and they are happy as a clam. The Mac Pros were really underbuilt. I mean, they only had 2 gigabytes of RAM, and because they require matched fully buffered DIMMs, we opted not to purchase more memory for them. We just ended up retiring them altogether. One of the reasons we bought the Mac Pros in the first place is because they actually have PCI Express expansion slots, which allowed us to install fiber channel cards so that the 4 Macs could link to a dedicated fiber channel Apple RAID. And yes, I actually have 2 RAID arrays sitting at work that I'm going to probably throw out once I pull the drives out of them. But anyway, nice, beautiful rack-mounted thing. It's such a nice piece of equipment. But unfortunately, it's obsolete to us, and I don't know anyone who would want to use it for anything. So anyway, we had these dedicated RAIDs, but the stuff never got utilized to its full potential, and after about 8 years of service, the Mac Pros were pulled into storage. Now, at that point, I had the ability to just toss them, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. So I sat on them for 2 years. I just left them sit in the storage closet. And finally I said, you know what, we need more room. I'm bringing in yet another 4-post rack. I need more room. These Macs have to go. So I gave away one of them Macs with a beautiful 20-inch cinema display. And I took one for myself, and I took 2 of them. There was actually one of them that was suffering some memory issues. So that one got scrapped. I pulled the hard drive out of it, put it in this one, and the optical drive went into this one too. And the third one, I ended up using it for parts. So I pulled the good memory out of it, and I pulled one of the working hard drives out of it. I then scared up an older 1 terabyte drive that I pulled out of an imaging server that I had years ago, and I now have more storage than I know what to do with. So anyway, the point of all this, and I looked in my laptop parts bin, and I found a nice, beautiful airport card, and I was able to pop that in turns out the Mac Pros and the laptops use the same damn card. So, and by the way, if you have one of these older Mac Pros and you do not have the optional airport card, you don't need to go out and buy a kit. Just buy a used, I believe it's the Airport Extreme card. And just grab one of those, and the antennas are built into the machine. You just pull the wires. They're actually bundled up like this, like a little tiny bundle of wires, and they're stuffed underneath in the very back of the second hard drive bay. Let's go ahead and shut her down, and we'll take the cover off and take a look at what's inside. In the meantime, I'm admiring this beautiful cinema display. The keyboard, by the way, was one that I bought. Remember that video I made a few years back where I got a free G5? And I was all excited and happy. So I got this free G5. The problem was it wouldn't boot up half the time. I then realized that it had a faulty, I think it was the Northbridge chipset. And it was causing it, once it warmed up, it would just start freezing up and shit. And I realized that the issue might be the infamous ball grid array method of surface mount packaging. So I went famously, I basically took the board out, put it in my oven for about 10 minutes or so, 350 degrees, baked the son of a bitch, and it worked for a week. Louis Rossman, which is why I left his channel up, Louis Rossman did a great video on exactly what is going wrong and why that method doesn't work. Of course, I followed the trend that everybody else was on, and I went and did it myself, and it worked, and I was all excited. But no, it only lasted a week. So, which is funny because now, like 3 years after I made that video, I've been having to dispose of G5 Power Macs because I have no room to keep the damn things, and I can't legally sell them. It's a disaster. Nobody wants the fucking things. But it's funny because, yeah, I'll put a video up that I'm sure I'll get comments like this on my channel. Oh, I want one. No, you don't. Until you cough up the money to ship the stupid thing halfway across the country, you don't want one. And they're expensive to ship, and they're not worth a lot, and they're not reliable. So why would you want one? They're not reliable because they all have problems, and I'll go over those in just a little bit. So let's go ahead and shut this Intel machine down. I'm going to touch the power button on the side of the monitor, where it brings up the shutdown menu. There we go. I have a drive in there that spins up and spins down randomly. And I'll go over why that is in just a minute. Well, first we gotta get this thing out from under the desk. Now this machine weighs about 4,000 freaking pounds. Jesus Christ. They're heavy. Which is why no one will pay to ship one of these things. They're too damn heavy. And not to mention all the reliability issues that the G5s had, and but the Mac Pros, the Intel Mac Pros, I just had one of them was defective, the other one went to a coworker, the third one came here, and the fourth one was used for parts. And I did scrap I think I mentioned this already, but the other one was scrapped for anything useful. So let's get it to a nicely lit area, which is hard in this house because I'm pretty sure that this house kind of eats light. The walls, the carpeting, the ceilings, they eat light. And I could have like freaking stage lights and it would still be dark. Like the G5, the Intel Mac Pro features an all-aluminum chassis. Apple went with aluminum because it is primarily why they did this is for the recyclability factor. Aluminum is a high percentage, I think it's like 100% of this case can be melted down and reused. So that was one of the big drivers for Apple to switch to an aluminum-bodied machine. Plastic is horribly bad for the environment. and both in production and in recycling. Like the G5, it features a very handy lockable latching system. Now to lock this, you simply pull this out right there, and then you close it back up, and you can put a Kensington lock or a padlock. Now, if somebody really wants to get into this machine, they're going to do it, but that's really more of a deterrent. A pretty good one, too. The aluminum cover, like the G5, is fully gasketed to reduce EMF leakages, and it is a conductive gasket. It has a very nicely made tooled aluminum support or locking backing structure thingy. So it's got all that. And like the G5, it has a very beautiful interior. One thing I like about the Intel version is, the component layout is completely different. Aside from the exterior appearance, it is an entirely different animal on the inside. The motherboard layout's different. The hard drive configuration is different. The optical drive configuration, you guessed it, different. Even the way the memory is installed. On the G5, you've got a power supply, a large flat power supply with two cooling fans on the bottom of the case. On some higher end models, I believe the quad-core G5 was one of these, you also had a liquid cooling system that was notorious for leaking. That liquid would actually leak directly into the power supply, shorting it out. Kind of a bad idea, don't you think? And the rate of failure was something like 100%. Eventually they were all going to leak, even despite the extended warranties on some of those, which weren't always advertised. On the G5, the processors are right about here. You would have two large towers on the dual-core models and a single tower on the singles. And they were encapsulated, or they were actually covered and cooled by a very large heatsink. I actually have two of these in a display case at work. I thought they were so cool looking, so I put them in this display, and our students look at them all the time in awe and shock, because they're absolutely gorgeous. But the real reason for such a large heatsink is that the G5 was such a hot processor. It was impossible to cool, which is why Apple even experimented with water cooling, and they never made a portable G5. Although the G5 was a fairly decent performer, it didn't compare to the Intel Xeon, which this one has two of. The Xeon processors are located and packaged right underneath this cover. This cover is very difficult to remove. You would actually have to loosen up this entire cage and slide it out of place. I can't tell you how hot this is. Really hot. Let me get my, I have a thermometer. What's interesting is it is 70 degrees downstairs, and generally for some reason it's usually pretty cold up here. This machine's been running for 4 hours or so. It is now 75.7 degrees up here. That is not normal. It's not usual. So I've got this non-contact probe here. Our Western Digital green drive is 91.5, 95, 86, 84, and 100 degrees. So, unlike the G5, the G4 supports up to 4 internal hard disk drives. The G5 had just 2 SATA bays right on the top, and they were extremely difficult to get to. Especially the one on the top. To get the top drive out, you had to pull the bottom drive out. They were actually mounted in rails. It was actually kind of ingenious how they did it. Let me get a marker and I'll show you on the whiteboard. So the G5 drive bay, this is a side view. So it would actually look something like this if you were to do like a cross section. So here's your bay from the side. And you would have 2 sets of grooves. You had one on the bottom. Let me see if I can remember this. So the drive would be pushed in. The top drive would actually be pushed in from the front, actually sort of towards the bottom. And it would kind of ride up this little rail that kind of, oh, that's a little out of scale. Kind of like this. It would kind of ride on this little rail, and it would be forced upward out of the way of the lowest drive like that. So it would actually start ramping up in the back, and then it would ramp up from the front. And the first drive bay was straight across like that. Very different, very unusual design. That might be wrong. I think I'm a little off. But because of the tight clearances around that bay, it was very, very difficult to get your fingers in there to unlatch them. The drives, I shouldn't have put the cap on this marker. The drives were, here's a front view. So there's your drive, and you had like a little offset cam lobe that would lock down like that. Same with the bottom. But you had to stick your fingers in there, and again, there was really no room to work. It was a very piss poor design on Apple's behalf. I mean, it was something they probably did quickly just to get the job done, but it was a bad design. Learning from their mistakes, Apple realized that if they cleverly repackaged the equipment in the case, they could actually fit 4 SATA drives in these removable sleds very easily. Just like that. And right down there, by the way, is where the antennas are. The antenna leads for the Bluetooth and Wi-Fi interfaces. Let me grab this flashlight so you can see. Right down in there is where I found them, like where that little bundle of wires is. In fact, right there is the Bluetooth. This does not have a Bluetooth interface installed, but if it did, it would be right where that plug is. Okay. Being a professional grade machine, this system was equipped originally with an ATI Radeon with 512 megs of discrete memory. I don't recall what model this card is. Let's see if it says it anywhere near. I could pop it open in System Profiler and we'll see. Yeah, I think it's written on the back of the card. But it's a very, very high quality card. It takes up 2 bays because of its massive cooling fan. The number of cooling fans has kind of been reduced in the Intel model. The G5 had 2 for the power supply. It had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I think it had 6 cooling fans. I remember there being 2 in the back, 2 in the front, 2 in the power supply. So yeah, about 6, maybe 7. It might have been 7. I think 7 might be. Oh yeah, because there was one way on the top. If I recall, there was one in the top and it was kind of like midway in the chassis. So like 7 cooling fans. The Intel model has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. About 5 cooling fans. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, I want to say there's only 5 in here. I know there's a fan in the back of the power supply, but just in the back. And they were able to do that by not only eliminating the G5 processor and going with a more thermally efficient Intel Xeon and later the the Core 2s. I think they might have made an I series. I don't recall, but by using more thermally efficient components and a better layout, they were able to reduce the number of cooling fans. For example, rather than having a fan dedicated to system memory, as they did in the past, they actually went ahead and they installed the memory on these riser cards that are in line with the path of fresh air coming. Actually, it would be coming, because it sucks through this way, it would be getting the air that was used to cool down the CPU. So the memory is constantly seeing a flow of air and exhausting out the back. And air is being drawn not only out of the case, but it's being forced into the case through this lower fan. Now the fan that's right up here primarily cools off the expansion bay and I believe that would be the north bridge or south bridge. I don't recall which is which. where they're located. That might be, that's the south bridge, north bridge. So it's cooling off the south bridge and providing a path of air across to the hard disk drives. Now, if you really wanted to cool your drives off a little better, you could probably affix heat sinks to the covers of the drives, or buy drives that have them built in. And of course, the power supply is cooled by its own fan, which draws its air from the front of the case through the optical drives. Moving our way back to the memory boards, these are kind of cool. These pull up like that, and they contain 4 slots each, giving you a total of 8 slots. And these machines require a fully buffered DIMM with heatsink built in. These are factory original memory. These half of these, actually 2 of these were original to the machine. No, 1, 2, yeah, 4 of them are original, and the other 2, the other 4 came from one of the donor machines I had. So I was able to fully populate these cards. Now let's take a quick look down into there. I mean, clearly this machine was built for some serious abuse. Unfortunately, Apple simply doesn't make anything like this anymore. It's kind of sad. This is like the end of an era for Apple, where they really, took care of their professional clients and providing them with a machine that not only cost a lot of money. Yes, a professional workstation is going to be pricey, but most professional workstations are built for some longevity in mind in terms of expandability and modernization. With this machine, you could take the stock configuration, which would have been a 750 gig drive, 2 gigs of RAM, and whatever else it has for graphics. And in theory, you should be able to spend your $3,000 or $2,700, which is what these cost when they were new. I believe these were $27 as configured. I remember seeing the original the original purchase order, but they should, in theory, be able to expand the machine as needed, and maybe get a nice healthy life out of them. In reality, I guess we didn't do too bad. I mean, because this machine is expandable, though, again, we were able to get 8 years of easy service out of these things before they started to, show their age. And now that this machine is 9 years old, I'm able to expand upon it. I've now increased the storage by, 3-4 times the original amount, and I've increased the memory 4 times over. About 4 times? I got 4 gigs in there, now I had 2. So I was able to double it. Alright, so I was able to double the RAM, but I could go even higher. I believe the max on these is either 16 or 32 gig. I don't recall which figure. But it doesn't matter right now. Maybe if I decide to upgrade it again, I could do that. But I don't think I'll need to. And in addition, I was able to easily replace the defective optical drive and add a second drive. So I have 2 DVD-RW drives. Why 2? Why not? Yeah, back in the day, it wasn't uncommon for people to have multiple optical drives in their machines. They were especially useful for duplicating disks, but I don't do that anymore, but hey, I could if I wanted to, right? But anyway, my point is, these machines were meant for a long, long service life. They were not only built to handle it, but they were built for expandability in mind and scalability. It's just sad that all Apple has right now is that stupid coffee can thing, which is, it is a bit of a screamer by itself, but it's too, it's like it's completely form over function. I mean, Apple is known for that, but when they came out with these Intel MacPros, they really got on their game. If you've ever worked on a G4 or a G3 Power Macintosh, you'll know what I'm talking about. Those machines were very pretty, but there were a lot of compromises in the machine's design. This is a no-compromise solution. This thing is built like a tank, and it's designed to fight the battle. And 9 years later, it's still fighting that battle, and it's still excuse my language, a fucking powerhouse. I have been playing with this machine for the past couple hours, and I just cannot believe how fast it is. Again, I'm running 10.6.8. If I really wanted to, I could make it run 10.7 or later. I believe that they've been tested up to not El Capitan, but Yosemite, I think. I know they'll run Yosemite with modifications. But the reason I have this machine is because I was really looking for something that would still support Rosetta. Now, because I have so many hard drives in this thing, and I can select whichever one I want to boot off of, I am going to have a Windows drive. And I might even put Windows 10 on it. But I'm going to have a Windows drive. I'm going to have a media storage drive. You know, I haven't really decided what each drive is going to do, but I have plans. One of those drives is going to be a built-in Time Machine backup drive for the main system. I actually have plans of rolling this out as the new workstation for BBISHOPPCM's world. This will be the station that I do all my video editing on in iMovie. I could use something better. I have better software. Maybe I'll use that. But I'm going to make this my primary powerhouse. The MacBook Pro, which is, you know, it's aging and it's not new anymore. It needs some upgrades. I want to put an SSD in it desperately. You know, that'll still be around, but I won't be using it for the same stuff that I was using it for. This was the intention of, by the way, the G5 that I got a couple years ago. That G5 was going to serve that function. It was going to take on that role, and it just didn't work out. The machine turned out to be a complete waste of my time. By the way, guys, don't buy G5s. If you want to collect an old Mac, get a G4, get a G3, get something reliable. The G5s, I've just had bad luck with them, and I have a large deployment of them. Now, if they're never turned off, if they're turned on and never turned off, and they never experience any thermal shock, and, you know, that rapid expansion and contraction that happens when you turn things on and off, they'll run forever. But only in those circumstances. So let's go ahead and put this heavy thing, by the way, it is heavy. After adding all those drives, I think I've added 20 pounds to it. Let me go and put it back right where it was, and we'll continue on. This thing is so powerful that when I turn it on, the lights dim. Well, they flicker just a little bit. And it boots up so fast. Look at that. Look at how fast that was. It's done. And even better, turns out I have one of these Apple ISight cameras. These were hard to find for a while. They weren't really that popular, I guess. But for the older cinema displays that didn't have built-in ISight, Apple came out with these matching ISight cameras. They're designed to, of course, complement the design of the G5 and the Intel. And they are no longer in production, obviously, but they're still very cool. And I think they're only 640 by 480 resolution. They're not real high res, but for a webcam, it's not bad. I'll demonstrate that in just a minute. See how that goes. I look like hell, warmed over. See? Hi. That is me, yes. I am on camera. Kind of grainy, but, you know, it... Oh, yeah, I have it aimed over there. So when I look at the screen, yeah. It's funny how I look like I'm some 500-pound schmuck, but I'm really not. I just look bigger than I am. Yeah, there we go. That's better. And my hair's all messy and matted from working all day long. But anyway, so we got the working webcam going on. And that, by the way, has a built-in stereo microphone as far as I know. And it turns itself off when it's not in use. I like that. What else can I tell you? Oh, let's take a look at the system specs on about this Mac. We'll go to the system profiler. 4 gigs of RAM, 2.66 core, dual-core Intel Xeon, 2 processors, 4 cores, 4 gigs of memory, and yeah. Now the video, let's take a look at that. Display, where the hell is that? Graphics, displays. It's a Radeon X 1900. 16-lane PCI Express. 512 megs of RAM. Not bad. Not bad at all. So, there you go. Cinema display set at 1680 by 1050. Yep. Not bad. Not bad. Not bad for free. I can't complain about that. I think I have like a $400 or $500 worth of equipment sitting here. But I can't sell it. Can't make any money on it. So that's that. Now, I did mention this. The cinema display, if you've never seen one of these, they have these are touch-sensitive buttons. There is no menu button. I don't know why. But you can adjust the brightness from here. Just touch up or down. And of course your power, which will turn the machine off. Will not turn it on though. I tried that. It won't turn the machine back on again. So there's that. But it will put it to sleep. It'll shut it down. Will it wake it up? Let's see. So we're now sleeping. Alright, let's try that again. See if it wakes it up. Yep. Wakes it right back up again. For mail, now because I'm running 10.6.8, I have some limitations. I was forced to use Firefox, which appears to be one of the newest browsers supported in 10.6.8, and Thunderbird for email. I can't use Apple Mail. It's not compatible with Google, apparently. So there's that. But I was able to get it working in Thunderbird. So there's that. Oh, backing up 5,000. Oh, yeah, I want to hold off on that backup. We'll do that backup tonight. So I've got one of my drives dedicated to Time Machine, but it still gives me 2 extra drives to play with. So I'm going to create a VM on this. I'm going to download VirtualBox. We'll make a VM. Have some fun. Good old-fashioned American fun. I've got a pre-registered version of Windows XP I can throw on there. Why not? You know, it's going to be some fun. So maybe we'll do some more later on. But for now, this is going to be my primary machine for all the hard work I do. Yeah, right. I've got plans for this thing. Hope it don't let me down. Thanks again for watching.